These cryptic figures, programmed into lightning-fast computers.
This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by nhliberty.org.
This is Ron Paul with your weekly update for February 1st. Last week, politicians in Washington made a few things clear about how they really feel about the state of the union. First, they are beginning to hear the growing discontent with the size and scope of government and the broken promises that keep piling up. Certain events in Massachusetts recently made that statement loud, clear, and unavoidable. In the face of those events, the powers that be made the determination that some populist rhetoric was in order and the idea of a spending freeze in Washington was proposed, albeit with several caveats. These caveats to the proposed spending freeze ensure that we are not at any risk of actually doing anything about the spending. First of all, it's timing. It wouldn't go into effect until 2011, which allows plenty of time to increase spending levels quite a bit before they are frozen. If the administration really understood and cared about our spending problems, they would not freeze spending a year from now, but cut spending immediately and significantly. But spending cuts almost never happen in Washington, and they are not likely now or a year from now if the politicians have anything to say about it. The second caveat is the huge areas of the budget that are shielded from this freeze. The entire State Department budget is exempt, as are all entitlements and all military-industrial spending, as well as all foreign aid. Fully 7/8 of the federal spending is excluded from this freeze, and some areas to be frozen were actually set to decrease, which means the freeze actually guarantees a higher level of spending. Especially insulting is the idea that in spite of our own fiscal problems at home, taxpayer dollars will continue to be sent overseas in the form of foreign aid, where it often does more harm than good. When need is demonstrated to Americans and they can afford it, they can be counted on for a tremendous outpouring of private, voluntary charity to worthy aid organizations that we recently seen in Haiti. By contrast, government-to-government aid is taken from the poor by force and too often enriches the corrupt. It is counterproductive and wasteful. But the idea of eliminating, freezing, or reducing foreign aid is not up for serious debate anytime soon. The third caveat is what is included in the freeze that would make it politically impossible to pass Congress. For example, air traffic controller salaries, education, farm subsidies, and national parks. I do not necessarily want a cut in spending in this country. I just want to change who does the spending. The spending should be done by the people who earn the money if they choose and on what they choose, without any government interference. That is what makes the economy work. Politicians should stick to the very limited roles given them by the Constitution instead of allocating such a sizable portion of our capital and intervening through regulations and tax policy. But because politicians have disregarded the Constitution and the people have no idea what rule they will break next, there is always a very real spending freeze underway in this country by the people. If government would stick only to what it was authorized to do and leave the rest to the people, then most of these problems would resolve themselves. Thanks for calling this update.
This edition of the Ridley Report was brought to you by the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance at nhliberty.org. If you were to go to the State House and do this, then you would step on the toes of a Liberty Alliance member, because they're all over the place at the State House. They are there fighting for your freedom, and they need your help. Visit the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance at nhliberty.org and join them. Or maybe I should say, join us, because I am a member. nhliberty.org.
Ugly. Pretty.